Hi, this is Mrs. Eichens doing lesson 3.3 in geometry, and I'm recording this from home right now, so the format's a little bit different and a few things are off, so you have to bear with me here. But in 3.3, we're talking about how to determine whether two lines are parallel or not. So if you have a note guide, make sure you have that out. This first screen is not on your note guide, but we're going to talk about that. We learned in section 3.2 that if you have parallel lines, like these two lines here, the corresponding angles, like angle 2 and angle 6, are congruent. They're the same size. Now, look at what happens over here. Let me get a different color going on here. When you have two lines that are not parallel. Well, now the angles that are corresponding would be this one. So this is above the line and to the right, and then above this line and to the right would be this one. Well, they're quite obviously not parallel angles, right? Because this angle is going to be a lot bigger than this one right here. So those lines are not parallel. So that's going to bring us to our postulate here. And it says if two parallel lines, okay, so the corresponding angle postulate said if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the pairs of corresponding angles are congruent. Now, the converse is when you switch that around. And what that says, and then my little picture got up there, and sorry about that. If two lines are cut by a transversal so that corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. So if you start out, in other words, if you start out, let me get a highlighter. If you start out with two lines and you don't know, it's not given that they're parallel. However, you are told that angle 2 and angle 6 are congruent. Well, that would mean then that lines J and K would have to be parallel. So we're coming from the other direction here. All right, the next slide says the corresponding angle converse. If two lines are cut by a transversal so that corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. So in the problem they're having us do, it says find the value of x that makes m parallel to n. So in other words, we have to find the value of x that's going to make those angles congruent, because corresponding angles have to be congruent if the lines are parallel. So let's go ahead and do that. So we would take the two angles, 3x plus 5, and the other angle, 65. And if they're corresponding angles, those are congruent, which means the measures are equal. So 3x equals 60. So x equals 20. And that would be your answer. Let's do another one. It says, is there enough information in the diagram to conclude that that line M is parallel to line N? Well, right now we have a 75-degree angle that's on the exterior and a 105 that's on the exterior, but they're on the same side. So that's not an angle pair. But we can figure out what this angle is right here, because these two are a linear pair. So these two have to add up to 180. So 180 minus 75 is 105. Well, this angle right here is 105, and these two are corresponding angles. So we would say yes by using the corresponding angle, and the name of it is the corresponding angle converse, because that says that if corresponding angles, so these are both 105s, if they are congruent, then the lines are parallel. And that's all we do. And the word converse is always what you use when you're trying to show that lines are parallel. If this was a test, if you didn't put the word converse, you'd get it wrong, because the converse is the postulate that says if the corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. Next one, we have some theorems that come from that. So it says if two lines are cut by a transversal so that alternate interior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. The alternate exterior angles converse says if two lines are cut by a transversal so that alternate exterior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. So this is alternate exterior. And lastly, same side interior angles converse says if two lines are cut by a transversal so that the same side interior angles are supplementary, then the lines are parallel. So that one is, remember, same side interior angles have to be supplementary. All right, so let's look at a problem, some problems where we will use that. And actually, I think we have a proof, but we might just go through that one real quick. So with the proof, basically you would start out by saying angle 4 and 6 are congruent. If you're given that, which 4 and 6 are alternate interior, well, you say, well, we know that 2 and 4 are congruent because they're vertical angles. And so if 4 is congruent to 2 and 4 is congruent to 6, then 2 and 6 would be congruent by the transitive property. So there, and we know that that would make the lines parallel. So if you start out with 4 and 6 being congruent, you know the lines are parallel. So let's use these now. So the first one says, can you prove that lines A and B are parallel? Explain why or why not. So we have to use one of the theorems or the postulate that we just talked about, one of those converses. So you are going to have questions just like this on your test, okay? So pay attention to these. So here we look at the angles that are congruent and we think, okay, what kind of angles are they? Oh, they're alternate exterior and they are congruent. So yes, lines A and B are parallel by the alternate exterior angle converse. And you would put alternate exterior angle converse. Okay, that would be the reason. Next one, you look and say, okay, what kind of angles do we have? Well, these are corresponding. So you would say yes by the corresponding angle converse. And that's a postulate, but we won't worry about that. So converse is the word we need to use to show that lines are parallel. Lastly, it says angle 1 and angle 2. It doesn't say they're congruent. It says they add up to 180. Well, the angles that are supplementary, if lines are parallel, would be same side interior, and these are not on the same side. So you would say no, the angles 1 and 2, let's say the measure of angle 1 is not equal to the measure of angle 2, which is what you would need using the alternate interior angle converse. So just know. Okay, next. Which lines are parallel if you're given these pieces of information? So if you have angle 1, let me get a different color here so it shows up a little better. If you have angle 1 congruent to angle 2, which lines would be parallel? Well, there are a lot of lines, so this is what I do whenever you have a problem like that. I darken the lines that form the angles. So angle 1 and 2 are formed by those lines. So now it's a little bit easier to say, oh, which lines are parallel? Oh, A and B. So we'd say line A is parallel to line B. All right, next, let's do the next one. If you have angle 6 and angle 7, so again, which lines form those? Those lines do. So that would be L, we just say L is parallel to M. Lines L and M. And then lastly, measure of angle 7 and the measure of angle 8, I should use 2 marks because they're not congruent. They equal 180, which means they're supplementary. So the lines that form each of those angles would be these. So the lines that are parallel would be line A and B. Okay, my little dog is eating in the background and she's being very noisy. All right, next, the fence gate at the right is made up of pieces of wood arranged in various directions. Suppose angle 1 and 2, angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Our lines R and S parallel. Okay, so we have angle 1 is right here, angle 2 is here. So if you have the parallel lines here and here supposedly, and this is your transversal, those would be alternate exterior, and they are congruent. It says suppose they are the lines parallel? Yes, and that would be by the alternate exterior angle converse. Okay, which says if alternate exterior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. All right, and we're almost done here, just a couple more. It says for what is the value of x for which A is parallel to B? Line A is parallel to line B. Well, those are same side interior, and if the lines are parallel, they would be supplementary. So 2x plus 9 plus 111, you add them together, they equal 180. And then we subtract 120. So 2x equals 60, divide by 2, x equals 30. And then in the next case, we look and say, okay, what kind of angles are those? Oh, they're corresponding. And in order for the lines to be parallel, corresponding angles have to be equal. And now you solve that. So 57 equals 3w, and then divide by 3. So w would equal 19. All right, and this is the assignment in this lesson, and those are the answers. Don't copy the answers, just check your work to make sure you're doing it right. If you just copy answers, you won't learn the material for the test, and then your test score, which counts way more, will not be good. So make sure you do the assignment. All right, thanks for watching.